1956 at the age of 23. My father was an engineer and in the Navy. They moved from Glendale, California to Arlington, Virginia, where I was born in 1958. In 1959, my sister was born. And shortly after, we all moved back to Southern California. We lived in Canoga Park in San Fernando Valley area. In 1969, we moved to Boulder, Colorado, as my father went back to school to change careers and obtain his doctorate in psychology. When we got to Boulder, my mother went to work at the University of Colorado, first in the admissions office, and then after 3 or 4 years, she transferred to the Department of Chemical Engineering as the administrative assistant there. And here the story of Jan and my mom begins. My parents divorced in the early 70s, and at the time we owned a boat and frequently went water skiing at Boulder Reservoir on the weekends. Occasionally, a few people from the department would join us, Ashok Taori or Jan KREIDER, and that was when my sister and I first met Jan. I was in 9th grade at the time. Jan and my mom started dating. To be honest, I don't know exactly when, and I was busy in high school and working. It wasn't until both Colleen and I had moved out and on in the early 80s that Jan moved into the house in Boulder. We always got together around food, either a meal that we all helped to prepare or a restaurant that my mom and Jan had found, and therefore, if they really enjoyed it, they frequented it regularly. In the mid to late 80s, my mom and Jan began bicycling. Jan had ordered bikes from Italy, the Pinarello factory. And there is a picture there of his friend Tom Kirkwood and my mother at the Pinarello factory, when Jan had the bikes sent back over to the U.S. I bought one of those bikes as well, and I began to accompany the group of friends that they cycled with on the weekends. That group included Macon and his wife Regina, John and Molly LeClaire, friends' names that you may have heard of that have been very involved with us since Jan and my mom's passing. We always started in Boulder, usually at their house, and ended at a restaurant where we shared a delicious meal. There were always a couple of cars with bike racks or Jan's truck parked at the restaurant so that we could throw the bikes in the back and drive home after the large meal in comfort. My mom continued to work for CU for 26 years, taking a leave of absence in 92 to 93 when she and Jan moved to Paris and Italy for a year, while Jan was working with the École de Mines and the JCRS in Italy. My mom loved traveling. She loved the traveling that she and Jan did. And while Jan was working, she always found a way to occupy herself, whether it was cooking, sewing, discovering new places for the two of them to go when he was free. When home in Boulder, they were grandparents who were involved in the lives of their 5 grandchildren. My mother often cared for Colin and Courtney, my sister's 2 children, after school. And my family, lived in Cordillera, about 2 hours into the mountains away from Boulder, and Jan and my mom would come up occasionally. They always were there on Grandparents' Day, and Jan was actually fairly involved with my oldest son Jordan in science activities, and they purchased a weather station when Jordan was, what grade? 8th grade, 9th grade? 8th grade, to place on the roof of the school, and Jan was very involved in that. He came up and talked to Jordan's class, and didn't he try and cook something with a magnifying
blow
glass?
things up.
Yeah.
Sounds like
Yeah, sounds
So
like it.
he was always very involved in that. As they were as grandparents, and we saw them many holidays throughout the year, getting together, of course, for a big meal, something that they would cook, either, a giant buffet that they always had around Christmas time, pizza parties at their pizza oven. My mom was always maternal. She was nurturing, concerned, caring, and selfless. She lived her life in service to others, and that is what brought her joy.
Woo! Good job.
Very nice.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you so much for coming, Valerie. Obviously, you have a
reason to be here with your mother's ashes, but just to meet you and be reminded again